EMF Camp, how are we doing? Come on, no? Perfect, awesome. Okay, cool. Slight change of tone coming in. Hi, everybody. As much as we are fun, flimsy, and look to be quite hilarious, do not do what we are going to discuss in this session today at home. We are security researchers. We have done this research together with international law enforcement and also with international crime reporters. So we had support and backing throughout this entire journey. Do not just start doing things with North Koreans. You might be putting yourself in danger. Anyway, speaking about putting yourself in danger, in the back is my intern right there while I'm driving a van. I'm Simon. I'm the founder and CEO of cside. I'm a startup founder, like there are many. That's not special. I am the chair of the anti-fraud division of the W3C, which is a small community group. I run a small cybersecurity company around web security. And kind of the starting story is very simple. I realized that firewall vendors were claiming to know things about browsers when, unfortunately, they didn't. And there wasn't really enough of a browser-level security company in the world. Anyway, I'm originally from Belgium. I used to live here in the UK, but since a little while now, I've been based in San Francisco. All right, so what do you do when you start a startup? You do fundraising. And as is always the case with fundraising, there is, of course, mandatory press coverage that comes as part of that. And what do you do when you get given money? You have to deploy that money and hire people to go build that thing, build that vision. So I put a bunch of jobs online. I used a very well-known applicant tracking system that then posted that job on various platforms. LinkedIn, Indeed, X Jobs, that's a thing nowadays, a bunch of those platforms. And then, of course, our investors were nice and reposted that on their platforms. And kind of a bit expected, there were quite some press articles out there. People were somewhat interested in what we were doing. And there you go, we started getting job applicants. Until we received thousands. Now, how do you go to, I'm going to start there. On paper, all these candidates looked great. They had very relevant background, worked at the right companies before, they had an active GitHub account. It just made sense. So these profiles were almost too good to be true. And then how do you sift through so many of these applications? Well, you start filtering for the best ones, and then you send them a homework assessment. Do a coding assessment, fill out this Q&A, let's do this personality assessment to understand how you are, and then that should really only take you an hour or so. And then here's what came back. Flying colors. People got 94%. There were some signs of cheating, which is tolerable. They slashed it 10 out of 10 out of 10 out of everything. And somehow they were also interested in learning Svelte, which is not that unpopular. Now, then another candidate, here's another one. Similar thing, 92%. However, our React weather app was a bit too much to ask. Well, what do you do with candidates like this? Well, you have a call, right? And they were a little awkward. I'll let you judge. So in this question that's going to come up now, like in the response I'm going to give, I asked about the border gateway protocol. The reason why I asked that is because when you ask people, how does it work to get a web page in a browser? Well, networking is part of that. They often forget it, and I ask. And kind of what I'm hoping to get here is people saying, I don't know, and asking questions, or either giving me a perfect answer, and then we'll dig deeper. The border gateway protocol is the thing that makes the internet route. I have a server in LA that I need to reach. How do I get there, right? That's what the BGP, BGP does. This is going to hurt your brain. It did to me as well, and I had to sit through the whole thing. I'm not going to have you do that, but here we go.
Actually, regarding this border protocol, it's just combination of the operator of the border. So actually, the potential context where the term might apply in this kind of policy, then the border management, and then also the political commentary is real important. Is important.
Needless to say, none of this made any sense. And so if you think that was bad, I kind of doubled down and I asked, okay, that's quite high level. Can you just be more precise? I really just want to hear about the networking side of things.
Well, actually, this is just what I told you is just what I provide you is just a big picture of the options for each management and then also maybe the policies. So maybe if I can give you some kind of examples, then for example, the agencies like the the government and then also border protection, or there may be organizations in other countries, then it is just they are just responsible for.
Okay, so this guy was talking about border protection. So clearly, border gateway protocol using his AI tool meant border enforcement, the physical people at the airport asking you if you brought any chocolate from abroad. Anyway, what did you notice? Well, a few initial signs, right? And if you start having a bunch of these calls, they're quite clear signs. There's really significant lag. He claimed to be a native English speaker. Now, I really don't want to be using that too much as a vector, but was he? It didn't really sound like that. And honestly, nothing he said made any sense. Now, this particular recording was made in 2024, before AI got good. Nowadays, he would probably give you a better answer. But as I said at the end of that thing, I wasn't going to have you sit through that whole thing. At the end, I say, let's move on, which is like the line, if any interviewer ever says, let's move on, you know you're basically screwed, you've been caught bullshitting. Anyway, this was another one of those candidates. I found this one particularly funny because in his glasses, you can see that he was getting some, let's put it, external help. Anyway, and then, well, every good employer needs to know who they're talking to. And if you're trying to be SOC 2 compliant, which pretty much every B2B company needs to do, you have to do background checks. So we use a platform that does identity verification for us, criminal record checks, tax evasion, employment, educational, social media, blah, 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 blah. A bunch of checks. Very standard stuff. Now, here's what that platform returned. All bueno, nothing to worry about. Pretty weird. Now, what I found particularly interesting was the fact, and you can see that here, there's a Gmail address. So they were sending a Gmail employment verification emails, which is not fully like illegal or weird, but using an @Gmail means they can just create an email address for someone. So I got a little bit weirded out by that, and I reached out to this person on LinkedIn. I said, hey, what's up? Like, do you know this guy? The answer was no. Oh, I'm onto something. So then I checked the identity card. Now I can show you this because it's fake. As you can see, it looks a little bit way out of, like it looks too perfect of a picture, doesn't it? There's a number of indicators here that there's an issue with this, but honestly, the technology to make fake identity cards got better since as well. This passed identity verification initially. Now, then we dug deeper. I reached out to this identity verification platform, and we actually became good friends throughout this process. It turned out that their systems did flag this as a weird application. There were all types of issues, and they called this person into a Zoom call asking to show that identity card. Now, what this person is using is a green screen card. Like any hotel PVC key cards, you can get these in green. And he was using computer vision to project these ID cards on there. Now, this was detected. They immediately spotted that this was not normal. However, identity verification is usually done by a bunch of people in like low-wage countries, and they're under insane pressure. So what happened here was the cost of a false positive is so high, these people don't want to bear the responsibility for it. If a company is trying to recruit someone and all the way at the end of the process it comes back as this is not legit, you may want to verify further, that slows down the recruiting process and is just generally not worth it for them. So they gave it a stamp of approval and a bad actor got away with it. So that shows identity verification, unfortunately, isn't all it. And there were so many of these guys. We started giving them Jane Doe numbers. So on the bottom right is Jane Doe 26. Jane Doe 26 and I, we go way back. It's actually quite a warm relationship. We have emojis made out of his face because he's got a very expressive face. There's some like memes about that that I also post on Twitter every now and then. Anyway, but Jane Doe is also known for his impeccable report on Upwork. So these people are actively doing other things in other places as well. Upwork being one of those platforms. I'll get back to that in a bit. Okay, so now they got me annoyed. There's clearly some really organized campaign happening out there with a bunch of, honestly, nation-state actors trying to get into companies. And then I remembered, the fuck, I'm running this company. Like, we can do this. Like, we can do browser forensics, and probably we can pull a bunch of data out of that. So the first thing that I did was make a job application portal where if they pressed the button to start the application process, some fun stuff would happen. You may want to lower the audio ever so slightly on my laptop in a second because it does get quite loud. But dramatic effect, here we go. can up it for more dramatic effect, I think, yeah. Yeah, so what I actually did is I called one of my friends who made this open source a while ago. I wasn't going to spend my company money and time on it. But yeah, when you moved your mouse, the window would move as well. And when you were unlucky to then click on it, it would open more windows. And it would put things in your downloads folder, it would mess with your clipboard, call all types of legacy APIs to do weird shit in your browsers. Open a cat, because why not? Yeah, that was my first response. And then, well then, by the way, if you want to check this out, interview.beverage Ltd. Do not send it to your friends or colleagues. And then I thought, okay, let's behave. Let's actually take this thing seriously. So we got some data out of these guys' browsers. We sent them a little thing to, hey, can you please confirm your job application here? And then we have this fancy dashboard in our product. It's not a marketing pitch, but you get it. We gather a bunch of data about these people. And then kind of the dimensions that we look at it is the user, the browser, the device, the network. Now I'll start with the network. The network, hella high latency. Woohoo! Like, you could go out and like get yourself a little cup of tea set up by the time the web page loaded. They were also using the mother of all signals, Astral VPN. Has anybody here heard of Astral VPN? Astral VPN is one of the only VPN providers that works from inside the Great Firewall in China, which is usually an indicator that there's some fishy stuff happening. Now, when it comes to the browser / the device, well, it was a Windows virtual machine. Very clearly a virtual machine, and it had some non-standard range fonts on them. For example, Cheon Rima. By all means, look it up. That's kind of a very common Korean, but towards the North Korean dialect font. They're usually not dumb enough to use Red Star OS, but it does happen. So yeah, there we go. To those of you that don't know, Red Star OS is a kind of an old Linux-based operating system that they use in the DPRK. Anyway, browser signals. The other thing that we noticed is there was a really significant amount of latency between the rendering of the page and them actually doing something. So usually when you go through form, for example, you would do a thing and something else would come up and then you'd respond to that and then there you go. And another clear one is when you type something, usually it comes in relatively consistently with some level of like movement between it. If you have a bad network connection with a lot of latency, then usually it comes in a freaking chunk, like, right? And you've observed that there. So it was very clear that like that was not a normal somebody sitting behind their computer doing their work thing. The homework assessments as well, these tools that we use for these homework assessments, they provide you with like 800 or 1,000 or 5,000 or so different questions you can ask your candidates. But they are standardized, so these people have made their own standardized library of answers on their side and just copy-paste them in. So that's all very standardized and clean on their end. And then, of course, nowadays, and this is more of like a last year thing, more and more AI automations using browser use. So actually using the browser and doing mouse movements and stuff and basically filling out an assessment, I must say a little bit faster than is reasonable, so you can still have it as a thing. Now, here comes our fun secret sauce. We were able to locate some of these people. So, neighboring countries of like North Korea, you'll find a few cities like Dandong, but also Shenyang, Yanji, and there's another one, Vanji, anyway. And then also in Russia, a neighboring city there. Now, then also spread to other countries like Laos, which is beautiful between Vietnam and Thailand. Beautiful place to go, but I can never. And then North America and like London and Switzerland and like numerous places, they were acting as if they were there. That being said, it was all quite obvious. Okay, now, this is where kind of the deeper research that we did with agencies came in. What we know about how these actors work. To become a North Korean official and be able to leave the country, you have to really climb the ranks. And so what happens is they send these people out in groups of 8, usually to 2 or 3 bedroom apartments, basically making them into a sweatshop and kind of forcing them to work as hard as they possibly can and bring back as much as revenue as possible. They know their family is being watched, and if they do anything out of line, that is their family on the line. They have some standardized process. So for example, the identity verification program that I explained, they definitely have an internal handbook on how to do that. And they get very organized at like bypassing these tools because there is just so many of them. But they do have their own freedom with their kind of little club on how to do things. They rarely, I would say, do things outside of the US because of the logistics of it. And I'll talk about that as well. They have laptop mules, but most of them are in the US. If they're hired within any of these other countries, then they're very likely make up some story and ask you to send a laptop to the US anyway. And actually, this is a fun one. I'm not going to claim any credit for this. There's a bunch of people on Twitter that managed to get access to these people's laptops, break in, and there's some interesting data out of there. They clearly just use a range of identities that are either stolen or completely made up. It's verified that they've been using Upwork as a source of income when revenue inflow is slow, and they have been using Gmail, which, well, better than Microsoft Teams, so we'll give them that as a taste benefit. Anyway, Zach XBT is the name of that Twitter person. Here's a great example of it. As you can see, they also come up with their own nicknames. These people's identities are very difficult to find out. Hence, Jane Doe. These are North Korean officials, right? So there is the question how much that piece of paper, their identity is actually, like, yeah, how they even go about that. Anyway, and here's a question. Why is this a thing? Well, they are fundamentally out there to create revenue for the regime, to fuel that weapons program that they have. In general, the DPRK is a major weapons supplier to all of their friends. And so since the Russia-North Korea conflict happened, their economy has also grown. This is a very well-known thing. In fact, there was I think a Hungarian researcher that managed to befriend the North Koreans and travel to North Korea to see one of those arsenal showrooms, for lack of better words. There is a bunch of research on that. If you ever want to get more info on that, I'll happily give it to you. But like, this is the thing. And so what they're trying to achieve is, well, plant mercenaries in places. And you may remember these two faces. These were two frontline soldiers that were captured by the Ukrainians in Russia. Well, guess what they're trying to achieve? They're trying to create hacker mercenaries. And they have many tiers within this. We've all heard of the Pegasus organization. There are multiple organizations, and this is one of those movements. Okay, now the real what's in it for them is even simpler. The worst case scenario for them, really, is that they can only manage to get a US-style wage out of you, which is about 150K USD. I asked this question, what's your salary range? They would be like a little bit below market range to make it easy of a decision, right? They'll be like, I can't understand them, but they're 20% cheaper. Anyway, so it's about 112K in British pounds. To give you an idea, the average North Korean worker in North Korea itself makes about $1,300 US a year. So this is a lot of money for them. They obviously get access to valuable intellectual property. Some of that is easily resold to their allies or reused themselves. That is a valuable asset to them. So they get that salary plus that. Now, if they can go further than that, they'll try to get access to internal systems, plant malicious NPM dependencies, get access to internal IT, and do a bunch of weird things. Now, in fact, there have been all types of reports around this already publicly. That is a standardized thing. They basically have a script that just goes through whatever they can to find stuff. And then in the worst case, and this has happened a significant amount of times, they basically get access to APIs that hold some kind of funds, whether that's real human currency or virtual currency, crypto. They just basically try to cash out as fast as possible and then disappear. Make no mistake, these are trained nation-state actors. The second they get access, their training kicks in and it moves super quickly and it is very standardized. Now, I mentioned the laptop mules earlier. The laptop mules are basically just people living in random places in the Midwest. In fact, the address that they put on the application is often the one that they'll ask you to send the laptop to as well. So what they do is they literally receive the box, take the laptop, they take it out of the box, go through setup, they plug in a hardware IP KVM. Now, that's kind of a new thing that came out in the last few years that people have been using. It's literally just HDMI, USB, chuck it in over the network, shwabam. You can't see that they have remote control software running on it. It's just that, right? And you can get those super cheap on Amazon now, which probably is partly because of them. Anyway, then they open it in the morning, and they close the laptop in the evening, and that is done, right? Even some of them do their taxes, which is funny because that's how this individual person was caught. A lady in Arizona became such good friends with the North Koreans that she started filing their tax paperwork. And during the raid, they found over, what is it, how many? I think 90 laptops. Yeah, when you have a living room like that, try claim you don't know you're doing something sketchy. Well, she did exactly that. So the defense, the laptops just showed up, I had no clue. I thought I had a legit job. But in the reality, she was filing taxes for people to have actual documentation to send in, often under those false identities. And she literally just had a laptop room that looked like this. Now, obviously, she was jailed for that. Oh, and after that, a further 90 of these laptop farms were raided. 29 of them were raided, 5 arrests were made, and 200 laptops were seized. So this was a rather big breakthrough. Anyway, and that's when I linked up with one of my journalist friends at Wired, and we put a whole article out. And it came out the same day. We kind of timed it as another large company, Kraken, in the crypto space, to talk about it, because that way I wouldn't have a red dot on my face when I walked out my front door. But yes, the thing is, this is real, this is happening. Remote hiring has significant risks, as we've all unfortunately came to learn over the last few years. And it's unfortunately not going away. With AI, these bad actors became way more powerful, way more capable at bypassing all of your usual checks and questions. So you got to get creative. What we do within the company is nobody gets hired without having a coffee, meaning meet them in person. And if they start like, ooh, my grandmother died, like the moment before, give them a second chance, but there's probably going to be a few, these agents are never going to show up, of course. Anyway, I'm leaving you with 2 more things, actually. I said 1 more thing, but I couldn't help myself. Interesting. Cool, all right. Can you tell me something about North Korea?
Actually, I have no idea.
Okay. Can you tell me something about Kim Jong-un?
Russia.
Okay, so then you wouldn't have a problem with saying that Kim Jong-un is a dictator? Can you say those words? There we go. We broke him, Jorn. Cool, we'll recap somewhere else.
Ja, dat was te verwachten.
Journalist, there we go. Anyway, thank you so much for your time. We have nice stickers for you, unparalleled security standards. We are doing a scavenger hunt as well. We have a van, we're all the way at the end of the event, like all the way at null sector. And cside is sponsor of this event, so thank you so much for coming. Thanks for making the best out of EMF.